Hi, and welcome back to our latest video in our series on installing and configuring Snort. I'm just going to pick up where we left off in the last video. If you recall and have watched that video, we actually started up our Snort instances. We have two of them running. Just going to get some PS output here, grabbing for Snort, just to show that those two instances are still up and running with all the options that we specified. I do want to make one little change. If you recall, we created a script called bridge start, and I just want to edit that real quick. There are some features available on most network adapters that we want to disable using the eth_tool command, and we want to do that for eth1 and eth2, which are our sensing interfaces. So we'll want to add in each of these eth_tool options here, turning all of these features off for both eth1, and then we're going to repeat the same ones for eth2 here. Other than that, we're going to leave the startup script the same. And by the way, I did want to mention, if your network operates with a specific MTU setting, something other than the default of 1500, you would put that in right here. Let's say you had jumbo frames and wanted an MTU of 9000. You would just put that in there just like that. But for now, I'm going to take that option out. And just make sure you have all these eth_tool lines. Honestly, you could probably just construct a for loop for each of these, but it works just as well to put each line individually, like I've done here. So I'm going to save my changes to that and quit out of VI. And if I go back into where I'm keeping all our install files, the only one we haven't touched yet is PulledPork. So I'm going to go ahead and use tar to extract that. And I'm going to change into the PulledPork directory. I'm going to make PulledPork.pl executable. And then copy it into user local bin. I'm also going to copy everything from this etc directory here using a wildcard to our etc snort directory. And we're also going to need a few Perl modules installed in order for PulledPork to function correctly. I'm just going to do those one at a time here, using cpan and the -i for install. First up is Mozilla CA. And the first time you run cpan, you're going to get this. You can go ahead and just take the default options here all the way through. And next up is IO socket SSL. Please note that these are case-sensitive module names. And some of the modules like this one will ask you some questions along the way. Just feel free to take the defaults by hitting enter. Now we'll do crypt SSLEAY. And now LWP protocol HTTPS. And it tells me here that this is already up to date. So that's already installed. So we'll move on to the next one, which is LWP simple, which is already installed. It says it's already up to date. So finally we'll move to the last one, which is archive tar. Okay, now that that's finished, let's move into our Etsy Snort directory. And some of the files that we copied from PulledPork include disablesid.conf, dropsid.conf, enablesid.conf, and modifysid.conf. Now remember, each snort rule has a basically the rule number is the signature ID is the SID, and each rule also has a JID or generator ID. The JID is always going to be 1 for regular text-based rules. It's going to be 3 for compiled shared object rules, or SO rules, as you'll see them referred to. And then your higher JIDs, like JID 128, 100 something, those are going to be rules that are for a specific preprocessor in Snort. For instance, if you write your own rule, it's probably just going to be a JID 1 rule. It's going to be a text rule. And these different PulledPork files get read when you run PulledPork. And let's say there's a rule that you want to have enabled that's not enabled by default. You would put that rule SID into enablesid.conf, and that would make sure that that rule gets enabled. Same thing for any rules that are enabled by default that you don't want to have enabled. You'd put them into enablesid, and that's how those files kind of work. So let's go ahead and let's edit PulledPork.conf. There's going to be a lot we need to change in here. The first one is, where are you pulling the rules from? And there's a line that's already uncommented called rule URL, and it points to the snort.org website and pulls the latest snapshot of the rules. Now, you might have to modify this snort rules-snapshot.tar.gz if you're running an older version of Snort. And that version still needs to have the rules supported and available. If it's a really old version of Snort, they're probably not making those rules available, and this will fail. The snort rules-snapshot is going to download the rules for the latest stable version of Snort. This time, it's currently 2970, which is what we're running, so we can leave this line alone. The only difference is oink code. You'll want to take out everything starting with the less than sign all the way over to the greater than sign, and right after the pipe symbol, you'll want to type in your oink code. If you don't have one, you can head over to snort.org and sign up. There's basically 2 types of oink codes. One comes from paying customers that have subscribed to the rule set, and that allows them to get the latest rules. But you can also sign up on the site for a free account and get an oink code. The free account is, the rules are limited to a 30-day release, meaning with the free account, you're going to get the latest rules 30 days after they've been released to the people who pay and who subscribe. There's also, that's uncommented by default, and I recommend you leave it this way, the community rule set. These are rules that other members of the Snort community, people just like you and me, have submitted to SourceFire Cisco, and they've been vetted and included in the rule set. So if you wrote a rule, for instance, that's not already available in the rule set, you could send it to them, and once it's vetted, they may include it in the rule set as part of the community rule set. In cases where there's a very serious, and this is not always the case, and I certainly don't speak for them when I say this, but I have seen cases where if a vulnerability is announced, and it's a really bad one, sometimes the VRT or Talos will include the rule in the community rule set once it's released. Again, it's entirely up to them whether or not they choose to do this. So there may be cases, if it's a serious enough vulnerability, where you won't have to wait the 30 days. They'll put it into the community rule set. But again, that's completely up to them on whether or not they do that. Don't expect it, but it is something that has happened and could potentially happen again. There's also commented, they're commented out by default, but there's also lines that allow you to pull down ET or emerging threats rules. Keep in mind that if you do download the emerging threats rules through PulledPork, all the rules are going to be commented out, basically disabled by default. So you would have to go into the enable sid.conf file, and in there basically specify that you want to enable the emerging threats rules. For now, my recommendation is just stick with just the SourceFire Cisco provided rules that you're going to get from this line here. Oh well, we find it, the rule URL line up here. Okay, and the other uncommented line here is for the rule documentation, and that's just this line, and it also requires your own code. I'm going to come back to these. I'll put my own code in, and then actually I'll go ahead and do it now. And what I'll do is just edit the video so that my own code isn't seen in the video. And be sure once you have yours not to share it with anyone. Okay, and once you've got your oink code in there, let's find the next lines we need to edit here. The first one I see is going to be rule path. Remember, we have everything under etc snort, so our rules are all under etc snort rules. So all we really need to do on the rule path line is take out the user local portion, and then we have etc snort rules snort.rules. Same for local rules. We created a local.rules file under etc snort rules, so we'll just take out user local here. Sid message, same deal, we'll take out the user local part. And we are going to be running a version of Barnyard that is equal or greater than the version mentioned here. And it tells us to use the SID message version 2 if that's the case. So I'm going to change that to a 2. The SID changelog, I'm going to leave that set to varlog SID changes.log. You can place this in any directory you want to. but it's basically just a change log of each time PulledPork runs. So you can look at that to see what were the new rules that were downloaded, what were rules that may have been deprecated and deleted. And it's also a good place to check to make sure that the run, when you ran PulledPork, that it was successful, that it was able to actually connect to the website, pull down the rules, and that there were no problems. SO rule path, user local lib snort underscore dynamic rules. I'll leave that set to the default for now. I'll check in a moment because I don't recall if we actually have that created in a different place or not. Pass the snort binary, user local bin snort should be good. Config path. Again, we're just going to take out the user local portion of this since we have everything under etc snort. Okay, there's even a nice warning that this section is deprecated, so we don't have to worry about the SO stub path anymore. So just leave that commented out. For the shared object rules, you'll need to specify your Linux distribution here, and they give you some examples of how to do that up here. Sort of the formatting that it expects. I believe you can also check either the Snort manual or somewhere on the snort.org website, list the most recent values you can use. In this case, I'm going to leave it set to the default. I'm really only concerned about the text-based rules right now, so we won't make any changes here. For blacklist, we do want to take out the user local portion. And we also want to change the actual name of the blacklist file. I believe we called it blacklist.blf. For IPR version, again, just taking out the user local portion of the path. And here you could define the PID files. Let's say your Snort and Barnyard processes, and you could run PulledPork with a specific command line option that when it runs, it tells it to basically restart those processes, send them a HUP or HUP. I don't do that. If you're downloading the shared object rules, you've defined your distribution and you're downloading those SO rules, then what's going to happen is you're going to have to completely restart Snort, meaning you would need to kill the processes and restart them again. It won't be able to just send the HUP and have them restart. If you do define this and you download the SO rules, what's going to end up happening is your Snort instances are just going to die, and you're going to be left without any Snort running until you manually start them. So I skip over this. I leave all this commented out. Here you'll specify which rule modification files to run when PulledPork runs. In case I ever want to use any of them, I typically just uncomment enable SID, drop SID, disable SID, and modify SID. And don't forget to take out the user local portions of those paths to match with what we have installed. And we have IPS policy. This setting is the base rule set. These are from SourceFire Cisco. And by default it's set to security. You can leave it set that way. And this is basically a security over connectivity type policy. This will have the most rules enabled. It's the ones that the VRT recommends that you have enabled. Other options instead of security would be they're actually available in the readme.rulesets file that comes with I believe it comes with Snort, or maybe part of PulledPork here. Honestly, I don't recall. If you search the system for readme.rulesets, you'll find it. But other options might be security, balanced, and connectivity. So it's sort of like security over connectivity, balanced security and connectivity, and then connectivity over security, where connectivity is the most important thing and therefore has the fewest number of rules enabled. And that should be all we really need to change here. I'm going to save and quit this file. I'm going to run PulledPork with the dash question mark just to show all the options. And point out to you that dash capital T means process the text-based rules files only. Don't process SO rules. Since I didn't fill out my actual distribution, it's not going to be able to process the SO rules anyway. So we're only going to focus on text-based rules. So I'm going to go into the rules directory here and just do a less. Actually, we can just cat snort.rules. Show you there's nothing in there. If I go into IP lists and cat the blacklist, nothing in there. So I'm going to run PulledPork with a -c, and we're going to point it to our PulledPork.conf file, and I'm going to do the dash capital T. I only care about the text-based snort rules. And we're going to run that and see if we get any errors. We'll just see what it tells us. And we get a message about a 500 error occurred. While it's trying to download snort rules-snapshot-2970.tar.gz. Okay, I'd actually stopped the recording because we were getting an error 500 trying to run PulledPork to download our snort rules. So I stopped recording to do a little bit of research on that, and I found a mention in the Snort mailing list that they were having some trouble with certain versions of wget and curl, and they recommended updating those. We're actually using the latest versions available in Slackware. I made sure I was running the latest using Slack package, and I was. And I checked on another working system that I've had up and running for a while, and it was running the same versions of those tools, and was also it was able to get the updates. It wasn't getting the error 500. So I did some poking around, and I found out, if you recall the step when we did a cpan-i Mozilla CA, that is the problem. I've already run it on this machine, but you'll want to remove that if you've already installed it using cpan plus. You'll do a cpan-p space uninstall Mozilla : CA. And you'll say yes here, and eventually it'll say all modules uninstalled successfully. It should take a little longer than this. Again, I had already uninstalled it. And next, I went ahead and grabbed SBO package because there's actually a Slack build that will install a version of Mozilla CA that will work with PulledPork. So I'm going to go ahead and install SBO package. Okay, so I'm going to run SBO package, and I'm going to tell it to synchronize with the Slack builds repository. This should only take around a minute or so. Okay, when the sync completes, we can exit that. And let's go down to search. I'm going to search for Mozilla. And one of the options here I'm going to arrow down to highlight it is the Perl-Mozilla-CA. I'm going to choose Add to Queue. Going back to the main menu, I'll go to the Queue option. And then Process. And OK. And I'm just going to OK the install option and start. Okay, it finished, so I can clear the queue and exit out of SBO package. Okay, just a reminder, we have nothing in snort.rules, nothing in local rules, and nothing in our blacklist. So now, let's try running PulledPork. We'll point it to etc snort pulledpork.conf. In the capital T option, again, the capital T is just going to tell it to process the JID1 text-based rules. So this time I'll hit enter. And so far, no error 500, so I think it's going to actually run through this time. I'm not sure what's going on with the latest Mozilla CA Perl module as downloaded from CPAN, but for now this is a workaround that will allow everything to work for you. Okay, and we can see the rule stats, the new rules that it got, and IP blacklist stats. You'll know it's done when you get this fly piggy fly message. I do just want to look back up through here. Sometimes you'll get a message, it'll say error about inline normalization not being enabled. We do have it enabled, and from what I've seen, you pretty much just always see that message, and it should be interpreted, even though it says error, it should be interpreted as more of a warning, but really it's not valid. You can completely be in an inline setup and still PulledPork will give you those messages, so ignore those. As long as you get the rule stats here and the fly piggy fly at the bottom, then everything should be good. We told it to output to varlog sidchanges.log, and you'll see that also, if you look at that file, I'm going to go to the bottom of it. it also has this information along with the time that this finished running. And it'll keep the old data, and every time you run PulledPork, it's going to just append to this file. Now if we look at snort.rules, we actually have a lot of rules. We only told it to get the JID1 rules. So here it says begin JID1 based rules. And a lot of them are commented out here. You'll see okay, we'll just grep out anything starting with a comment character. And we do have a lot of active rules here. In fact, our number of active rules is around 9,473. That may not be a completely accurate number because I haven't looked through to see if there's any spacing or anything, but it should be generally at least ballpark. And we also have a lot of IP addresses in our blacklist file now. In a future video, we are going to go over how to just send the hub signal to Snort to let it process the new rules without actually stopping the Snort process completely and restarting it. For now, let's just stop it completely and restart it. So what I'm going to do is, let's go back to our root directory where all our scripts are. And I'm going to do let's first make sure we have 2 Snort processes running. I'm going to do a kill $PID of Snort, and the PID of Snort should be in parentheses. And you'll see now we don't have a Snort process running. So at this time, I'll run our script, nfq start Snort. And you can see it using both processes for Snort using a bit of CPU. As they start up. And now that we have rules loaded, you'll also see that, last time I think we were using 1 point something % of the memory, maybe 2, and now we're using a considerable bit more because now it has all of those rules loaded that we just downloaded with PulledPork. And I'll save the Snort reload scripts for a later video. We'll work on that as part of, sort of tidying up the installation. For the next video, though, what I plan to do is, we've already installed Barnyard 2, but we need to get it configured, make sure it can talk to our Snorby machine, and we're going to do all that in the next video, so look forward to that for the Barnyard setup. Okay, thanks for listening, and I hope you'll subscribe to this channel, and look forward to our future videos. Okay, thanks.